Inheriting a home can feel like you've been dropped into a maze with no map. It's already such an emotional time, and then bam, you're hit with legal jargon, confusing tax rules, and all these deadlines. That's why we put this together. Think of it as the guidebook you were never given, but definitely need. So let's jump right in.
And it's so true. On one hand, it's this incredible, meaningful gift, a real legacy, but on the other, it's a huge, complicated responsibility that lands in your lap overnight. This isn't just about property, it's about navigating a major life transition. Our goal here is to help you clear those hurdles and see the path forward. All right, let's just get right to it. For almost everybody, the first thing that pops in your head, the biggest source of anxiety, is taxes, right? What are we gonna owe? When do we have to pay it? We're about to lose a huge chunk of this inheritance to the government? Let's tackle that head on.
Okay, so first things first, let's get some good news on the table. In California, there is a 0% state inheritance tax. That's right, 0. So for the simple act of receiving the house, it doesn't matter if it's worth $500,000 or $5 million, the state of California does not send you a tax bill. You can take a deep breath on that one. So you're not getting taxed just for receiving the home. But if you decide to sell it for a profit, that's a whole different ballgame. That's where something called capital gains tax comes in. And this is where one little concept, the stepped up basis, could literally save you tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. The best way to think about stepped up basis is like a giant tax reset button. Seriously, the IRS basically just forgets what your parents paid for the house way back when. For tax purposes, your new cost is whatever the house was worth on the day they passed away. And this little detail is absolutely critical. And this is why that reset button is a complete game changer. Look at this. If your parents gift you the house while they're alive, you get stuck with their original tax basis, say $100,000. If you sell it for $1 million, you've got a $900,000 taxable gain. But if you inherit it, your basis gets stepped up to that $1 million market value. Sell it for that price, your taxable gain is zero, nothing. This is why gifting a home is often a massive, massive tax mistake. Okay, so that's the tax if you sell. But what about the one you have to pay every single year? The property tax bill. In California, thanks to Prop 13, a lot of people who've owned their homes for decades have these unbelievably low property tax bills. The big fear is, the second you inherit it, is that bill gonna skyrocket to reflect today's crazy home values? Well, unfortunately, that's a very real fear. The game completely changed in 2021 with something called Proposition 19. It basically threw out the old playbook for passing on low property tax rates and replaced it with a much, much stricter set of rules. And just look at what this means in the real world. In this example, a family was paying a tiny $1,500 a year in property taxes. Before Prop 119, their kid could inherit that same low tax bill, even if they decided to rent the house out. But now, if that child doesn't make it their primary home, the county can reassess it, and that tax bill can jump all the way to $12,000 a year. For a lot of families, that's just not sustainable. So, how do you avoid that insane tax hike? Well, you have to follow a very strict formula. As the child, you have to physically move into the home and make it your primary residence within 1 year. And you have to file the right paperwork, like the homeowner's exemption, also within that 1-year window. Listen, these deadlines are no joke. If you miss them, that benefit is gone for good. Okay, we've talked a lot about taxes, but getting legal ownership of the house isn't just about taxes. There's this whole legal process that tends to sneak up on families and cuts them completely off guard. It's called probate, and it's a court process that can tie up the entire estate for a very long time. Now, this is probably the single biggest misconception in estate planning. People think, oh, we have a will, so we're fine. Wrong. A will does not avoid probate. In fact, a will is basically just your instruction manual for the probate judge. The court is still in charge. The best way to keep your real estate out of probate court in California is with something called a living trust. And if you're thinking, okay, a little court process, how bad can it be? Well, it is not fast. A totally standard, no-drama probate case in California takes, on average, 9 to 18 months. And that's if everything goes right. Any little disagreement or delay can drag it out way longer. And all that time, the house and other assets are basically frozen. And it's not just slow, it is expensive. California law sets the fees for the attorneys and the executor, and they're based on the gross value of the estate, not what's left after the mortgage. These fees usually eat up about 4 to 7% of the estate's total value. So on $1 million home, you could be looking at over $40,000 just in fees before any of the heirs get a dime. So you've got this process that's slow, it's expensive, and it puts all your family's finances out there as a public record. How in the world do you skip all that? Well, the answer really comes down to planning ahead. I mean, just look at the difference here. It's night and day. A will guarantees you're going to probate. A living trust is designed to avoid it. A will becomes a public document for anyone to read. A trust keeps everything private. With a will, a judge is calling the shots. With a trust, the person you choose is in control and can often get everything settled in a matter of weeks, not years. Okay, so the answer seems simple, right? Get a trust and you're good to go. But, and this is a huge but, there's a major twist here. It's a critical detail that so many people miss, and it can make that expensive legal document totally worthless. The answer, and this shocks so many people, is no. A trust doesn't automatically protect your house. Think of a trust like a box. You can have the most beautiful, well-made box, but if you never actually put anything inside it, it's just an empty box. Funding a trust just means you've retitled your assets, like changing the deed of your house, so the trust legally owns them. And you would be surprised how often this happens. People make these simple but very costly mistakes. They get a trust made, but they never get around to changing the deed of the house. Or maybe they refinance their mortgage. The bank takes the house out of the trust for the loan, and they forget to put it back in. Or they open a new investment account just in their own name. Any asset that's not officially in the trust name is probably headed straight for probate court. Okay, that was a lot of information, I know. So let's boil it all down. Let's pull everything we've talked about, from the taxes to the trusts, into just a few clear things you need to know. These are the takeaways that can save your family a ton of time, money, and stress. Okay, here are the 3 things you absolutely have to remember. Number 1, never gift a home to your kids while you're alive. Let them inherit it so they get that huge tax advantage from the stepped-up basis. Number 2, if you want to keep those low property taxes, do not miss that 1-year deadline from Prop 19 to move in and make it your primary home. And number 3, a trust only works if it's funded. Always, always make sure the deed to the house is actually in the name of the trust. So at the end of the day, it really all boils down to one question. Planning ahead with these rules in mind is what turns an inheritance into the true legacy your loved ones wanted for you. But ignoring them can accidentally set your family up for a financial and legal disaster. The choice really is yours.